Story 1. My dad was an amazingly loud sneezer. He used to practically achieve liftoff in his recliner for a few seconds. I'm pretty confident the people next door could hear it. Then he followed up by taking out his handkerchief and blowing his nose. He was like a flock of low-flying geese overhead. I think he considered it an obligation to scare us. Story 2. Not a dad, but my father, his father, and his father's father have all passed down what I've dubbed the howitzer. No matter how hard any of us tried to contain it, we involuntarily rear back and let out a sneeze that sounds like an artillery shell being fired. It's glorious, and I hope to pass it on. Story 3. I made the mistake of bringing children into this world. So the only pleasure I have left now is sneezing so loud the house fears its imminent collapse, and farts that break louder than thunder. Life's little pleasures while I waste away spending millions on the life of children who will eventually just pay into the same debt trap. Story 4. I heard my dad sneeze on the street from the top of my 7th floor house with closed windows and headphones on while gaming. It's not even embarrassing anymore. It's just impressive. Story 5. I regret that I am guilty of intensifying my sneeze volumes. I used to do it to scare my kids, but they're grown and gone, so I'm only scaring my dog. I feel bad about that, so I have greatly toned it down. However, I have one granddaughter who lives with my wife and me, who learned her lesson well. She has little tiny, almost silent sneezes, practically sneezettes. For this lack of what she would consider a robust sneeze, immediately after one of her little squeakers, she literally screams, "Chew!" startles the bejeebers out of me and sends the poor dog to try scrambling under the bed. Story 6. I feel like the question is the answer. Why not sneeze so hard that your children will be so bewildered that years later they feel compelled to consult strangers in order to process the trauma and mystery? Story 7. Isn't it something that vocalizing your sneezes is a learned behavior? Like people who grew up in the deaf community just do the sharp exhale because they never heard someone actually go achoo or whatever your local variant is. My family is a sliding scale of extremes. My sister is the unending rapid-fire quiet sneezer, probably because she felt that dad's dog-startling scream sneezing is so extra. Mom rolls in at a fairly medium volume but is also unending. Then there's me with my 3 to 4 moderately powerful blowouts with an annoyed grunt at the end as a flourish, and I'm good. Story 8. Dads are legally required to do this. Upon the birth of your first child, the sneasal cortex becomes enlarged, permitting the creation of extremely loud sneezes. Story 9. Restraining my sneeze is quite painful. It's an involuntary reflex, and mine causes me to take in a large volume of air before expelling it very forcefully. Vocalizing through it like ATCHCHA is also part of the involuntary reflex, and it's uncomfortable to suppress. I'm really very sorry it displeases so many people, but on the other hand, they always have the option to go themselves. So there's that. Story 10. Not a dad yet, but I'm sure I'm giving out free heart attacks to people. I try to warn them. They don't scatter. It hurts to try to hold it in. No one knows the feeling of hearing "holy shit," "fuck you," "oh my god," "enough," before hearing "bless you." Story 11. I can't come due to back pain and antidepressants. Sneezing is the best I can get. Not a dad, but I tell so many dad jokes and tuck my shirt in so it's honorary. Story 12. Because if I'm supporting my family and providing food and shelter as well as entertainment and fun, then I can damn well sneeze as loud as I want to, as long as I cover my nose and mouth. But I'm no tyrant. You're in my house, and you can also sneeze as loud as you want. Just cover your nose and mouth. Story 13. My boyfriend is like this to the point that it is literally shocking to hear him sneeze. It hurts my ears. I had no idea it was a dad thing, but it makes so much sense now. He's basically an old man, laugh out loud. Story 14. All my life, my dad would sneeze at atmosphere-shattering decibels, but he would also pair this delightful oral and sensory experience with a short burst of gibberish. It's like he couldn't not sneeze and say something incoherent. Guess who does that now with his own kids? Yep. Makes me laugh every time. Story 15. Have you ever sneezed at a moderate to low level, then said, "Excuse me," to which everyone looks at you and asks, "For what?" "Oh no, Never again will I sneeze without everyone in the vicinity knowing about it. For what? This everyone. Story 16. Our sensory system has changed over time, so we do not sneeze at the drop of a dime like all you kids. So, things pile up a bit and need proper cleaning. Story 17. I blame it on my incredible strength. I'm just so strong that my sneezes erupt violently due to my overwhelming power. It's involuntary. Who's going to argue? My wife who asks me to open jars and carry all the heavy groceries for her? My son who can barely lift the vacuum cleaner? Story 18. I'm not a dad, but I've begun sneezing very loudly lately and am afraid of what I am becoming. I've also developed an increased interest in the temperature of the house and in grilling. Story 19. It's not that I can't. It's just that I don't care enough to impress anyone with my quiet sneezing anymore. So I just let it out. The same goes for burps, farts, grunting when I stand, sit, lift, walk, jump or live. With any and all of those sounds, I'm saying, I am dad. Hear me roar. Story 20. There was a girl at my old workplace who told us, seriously, that she had a condition that made her sneezes extra loud. Achoo. There's just no way. Story 21. I get this all the time, but I'm a 5'0" grandma lady. I can't help it. I think my head will explode if I do a kitty cat sneeze. I always warn the household when I feel one coming on. Story 22. I literally don't know. I used to be able to sneeze so quietly. I used to always think that people who did that were doing it loud on purpose. But now every time I sneeze, it's obnoxiously loud, and I notice it has gotten worse with age. Weird. Story 23. Not sure, I used to sneeze normally, but something happened after the kids were born. Now I sneeze hard enough for objects to start vibrating. Maybe it's the baby poop smell that needs to be sneezed out properly, and the body doesn't readjust once the kids grow up. Story 24. Because it is actually harmful to try to hold your sneezing, which a lot of girls, including my wife and some guys do. My question to girls. Why do you try to hold your sneeze? Story 25. I go through about 20 tissues a day. After meeting with an ear, nose, and throat doctor and an allergist, it appears death is my only cure. We don't sneeze on purpose, people. It's like asking people with one leg why they limp so awkwardly. Story 26. Ever since I turned 40, it's like my face is a shotgun cannon that shakes the house when I sneeze. My daughter's teacher, on a Zoom call the other day in a different room on a different floor, stopped mid-sentence to make sure everything was okay at one of my sneezes. Not a damn thing I can do about it. I'm afraid if I bottle it up, my head will explode or I'll stroke out or something. Story 27. I'm not a dad myself, but I would consider myself to have a dad sneeze. Very loud, aggressive, the bunch. It's not the fact that we cannot sneeze normally, it just feels way better to release it all in one fell swoop. We don't really care about the people that actually get mad about it, and we like that people find it funny when we do it. Story 28. Not a dad, but I picked it up for mine. There's something about being a tall, big guy that just makes you sneeze like a shotgun blast. I had a teacher ask me if I was done and scared the daylights out of a sleeping classmate. If it bothers people, just understand that we know it's bothersome to others, and that doesn't make us feel good inside. Story 29. Not a dad or a male. Totally female here. But one time in 8th grade, I sneezed in class, and the teacher proceeded to yell at me, saying, "Your sister never sneezed that loud in my class. Be more like her." My sister is 3 years older than me, and I got yelled at for not sneezing as quietly as her. Story 30. My dad is your typical sneeze screamer, and I inherited his sneeze gene. All my life, I sneezed like a normal person, but in my late 20s, my latent sneeze gene somehow activated, and I have been waking everyone up with my morning sneeze routine ever since. Not a dad, but as a sneezer's kid, I can verify the sneezes crash like a tsunami. You either go with the flow or face the consequences. Story 31. My fiancé and I do not have children, so he is not technically a dad. We do, however, have 2 dogs. Every time he sneezes, it startles all 3 of us, and he follows it up with a blubbering sound akin to some Three Stooges antics. Story 32. I have a big nose already and sneeze really loudly in general. I'm not even a dad and I can't imagine the horror of what's to come as I take that mumbled big dad breath and burst the gates of the wind god Aeolus open while Zeus thrusts lightning and claps thunder. Story 33. We use my dad's sneeze to find him in stores. Where's your father? Achoo. Oh, sounds like he's that way. You know you're getting close when you start to encounter startled people. Story 34. Because we don't hold it back. It's bad to do that. That being said, my ex-father-in-law used to sneeze like he was being stabbed in the back of the neck. Achoo. I actually asked him if he was okay, and he just said, yep. Story 35. Has anyone else felt themselves begin to sneeze louder as they get older? I have normal sneezes, but I think they are changing. My dad has window-shattering, extremely loud sneezes. Story 36. A dad at my work, a large production factory, sneezes at ridiculous volumes and can be heard from one end to the other. It's startling to have him sneeze up close. Story 37. Knew my dad wasn't the only one. He sneezed in an airport one time, and people came from way down the hall to make sure everyone was okay. It was so loud and violent. Story 38. Not a dad. I like to sneeze loudly because I can, but I keep my cool in public spaces. I'm pretty confident I can fill an entire cathedral's worth of choirs with my sneeze energy. Story 39. Everything is a competition. This even includes sneezing. Everyone should know a man is sneezing and just how intense and manly that sneeze truly is. Story 40. I've always had loud sneezes. My lungs are really big and hold a lot of air, so when I do the big pre-sneeze inhale, it's like Baron Munchausen up in this. They almost never get to capacity unless I'm about to sneeze. If I try not to control them, my ears pop when I try to silence them or I see stars. I assume it's from the pressure I'm generating having to go somewhere. I don't know. It hurts though. I've got to let them out. Story 41. I'm not a dad, but I have such loud, violent sneezes that sometimes they cause painful popping in my neck, chest, and back. I've actually pulled my back from a sneeze before. I do have insane allergies though, and most sneezing is a result of particulates or a reaction to something in the air, so I sort of understand why my body reacts so violently. Story 42. My wife asks me if I'm okay when I sneeze because it sounds like it hurts when I sneeze. Last year, I separated a couple of ribs playing baseball, and it really did hurt when I sneezed for about 6 months. Story 43. Buddy, as a 48-year-old who just started sneezing like my dad, I have nothing but sympathy for you. Something happened this year. I got a head cold. I couldn't sneeze through my nose and mouth like I normally would. All of my sneezes nearly shook my double wide off the blocks. The cold has been gone for weeks, but my double wide is still in danger of being knocked off its blocks. I blame that damn COVID-19. Story 44. Everyone here is a real sneezer but me, apparently. For some reason, everyone thinks that my sneezes are coughs and that my coughs are sneezes. Whenever someone says, bless you, I just learned to say thank you, regardless of whether it was a sneeze or a cough. Story 45. Dude, it's like a size comparison. The mightiest sneeze proves dominance. If you fail to achieve a greater sneeze, you regress back into your newly shortened territory of shame and disgrace. You begin to feel utmost sorrow when he proceeds to steal your wife, as she is into only the biggest of sneezes. Your lineage is now in tatters, and you decide that there is one thing he can't take, and that is your nose, the muffled device that brought your misery. But in reality, he can, and he leaves it as a reminder of your defeat and demise. You then go on to try to get a new job, as he has already ruined your social life, and your work conditions are unbearable. It's like the days in high school before you were a dad and before your newfound talent was found. You realize your life is now meaningless. He has won. Story 46. We do sneeze at an appropriate volume. The object of sneezing is to clear whatever foreign object is irritating your sinuses, and you don't do that by sounding like an asthmatic kitten. You're just an ineffectual little wuss. Story 47. I sneeze as forcefully and as loudly as I can. This is the only way to sneeze, or else you will get the dreaded re-sneeze, which is the leftover sneeze if you do not get it all out on the first try. If you are not waking up the old lady next door, You are doing it wrong. Story 48. I used to wonder this about my own dad when I was a kid. I found that my sneezes have become louder the older that I get. I'm 45 now, and they have reached a pretty loud level. I don't know what it is. If I live another 30 years, I wonder just how deafeningly loud they will grow to be. Story 49. Let me explain. A guy grows up and his sneezes are normal. Then he gets a spouse and kids who bring extra germs, bacteria, and dust. Suddenly, his previous normal sneezes don't work anymore. So, he gets super loud sneezes to blow out all the extra filth. Story 50. I became a dad 5 years ago and I just realized the shift where I turned from an appropriate volume sneezer to a loud one. Around the time my daughter was big enough to laugh, I made my sneezes loud and weird sounding because it gets a nice little chuckle out of her. A few days ago, I tried sneezing with less volume at work because I was getting too obvious. But it was difficult. So now I'm actively trying to have a home sneeze for chuckles and an outside sneeze for decorum. Story 51. I laughed about my dad doing it. Sure enough, my sneezes are starting to get louder. I cannot seem to suppress them without risking an aneurysm. It must just be a man thing, like a full-grown male lion roaring versus the mewing of female lions and cubs. Story 52. A few years ago, my father-in-law sneezed so hard he collapsed his lung. He hasn't toned down the sneezing at all and still sounds like a sonic boom through a megaphone. Story 53. You are under the scientifically mistaken assumption that loud and appropriate are always two mutually exclusive terms, sneeze-wise. The correct scientific association here is that loud and sneeze and dad and appropriate and force are all mutually inclusive when governed by the following equation. Appropriate equals loudness of dad asterisk force of sneeze, which establishes that appropriateness is preserved as long as the loudness of the dad varies directly with the force of the sneeze. It should be mentioned that this law applies only to dad sneezes which have been studied extensively. In fact, there seems to be an inverse relationship between force and loudness when the sneeze is motherly, which appears to be the source of associated confusion in the relationship between loudness and force. However, further study of motherly sneezes is required. Source: I am a dad, and I sneeze.